Premack's principle is that more probable behaviors will act as reinforcers for less probable behaviors. It's named for one of the first psychologists to disconfirm transsituationality experimentally. In a paper published in 1963 in the Journal of the Experimental Analysis of Behavior, David Premack described an experiment where he investigated whether each of several operant responses would function as reinforcers for the others for 4 cebus monkeys. During the baseline, there were no programmed contingencies. Premack just observed each monkey alone in a room with various operant responses available, and he measured what they did, that is, how many of each type of response they made in the hour. To establish a reliable baseline, he observed each monkey for an hour per day over several days. This graph shows approximate results for one monkey, Chico. He engaged in lots of lever pressing, some door opening, and relatively little plunger pulling. If you were to arrange those 3 contingencies from low probability to high probability, what order would they appear in? Pause the video here and note your answer before the order appears on screen. Here's part of figure 8.5 from the textbook. From low to high probability, the order is plunger pulling, then door opening, then lever pressing. That is, over 8 baseline sessions, Chico showed a clear preference for lever pressing over door opening and for door opening over plunger pulling. Next, Premack arranged a series of contingency conditions. Chico had to make response B before he was allowed to make response C. If the rate of B increased, the conclusion is that C reinforces B. If more probable behaviors act as reinforcers for less probable behaviors, that is, if Premack's principle is correct, we can predict that the rate of B will increase in any condition where C was more probable than B in baseline. Pause the video here and write down the conditions when C should act as a reinforcer for B. Based on Premack's principle, the consequence should have functioned as a reinforcer in conditions 1, 2, and 4, but not in 3, 5, and 6. And that's what happened. A corollary to Premack's principle that more probable behaviors will act as reinforcers for less probable behaviors is the prediction that less probable behaviors will act as punishers for more probable behaviors. In a paper published in 1975 in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, Animal Behavior Processes, textbook author Jim Mazur described some tests of Premack's principle with laboratory rats as the research subjects and wheel running and drinking water as the operant responses. As in Premack's 1963 experiment, there were no programmed consequences during the baseline. Mazur just measured how much time rats spent drinking water and running on the wheel. In general, rats spent about 17% of the baseline drinking and about 10% of the time running. That is, they spent about 17 seconds drinking for every 10 seconds they spent running. So Premack's principle predicts that drinking will reinforce running and running will punish drinking. In one experimental condition, Mazur arranged the following reciprocal contingency. A rat had to spend 15 seconds running for every 5 seconds drinking. That is, if a rat had spent 5 seconds drinking since the last time it ran on the wheel, it then had to spend 15 seconds running on the wheel before it was allowed to drink again. And reciprocally, if a rat spent 15 seconds running since the last time it drank, it had to spend 5 seconds drinking before it was able to run again. With the reciprocal contingency that the rat had to run a lot so that it could drink a little, Premack's principle predicted 2 things. First, the opportunity to drink a little would reinforce running, so running should increase, which it did. The more probable behavior reinforced the less probable behavior. At the same time, the requirement to run a lot in order to drink a little should punish drinking, so drinking should decrease, which it did. The less probable behavior punished the more probable behavior. So far, these results are compatible with Premack's principle. But in another condition, Mazur arranged a reciprocal contingency such that a rat had to spend 45 seconds drinking for every 5 seconds running. That is, if the rat had spent 5 seconds running since the last time it ran on the wheel, it had to spend 45 seconds drinking, the preferred activity, before it could run again. And reciprocally, if the rat spent 45 seconds drinking since the last time it ran, it had to run on the wheel for 5 seconds before it could drink again. In this drink a lot to run a little condition, the opportunity to run a little did not reinforce running. In fact, running decreased. The more probable behavior punished the less probable behavior. And at the same time, the requirement to run a little did not punish drinking. Drinking actually increased. The less probable behavior reinforced the more probable behavior. These results are not predicted by Premack's principle. Mazur showed experimentally that it is possible to use reciprocal contingencies to increase or decrease high and low probability behaviors. That is, for example, you can increase vegetable eating by making dessert contingent on finishing dinner, and if you wanted to for some reason, you could also increase dessert eating by reducing a vegetable requirement. This idea is at the core of response deprivation theory. Any behavior that is restricted below its baseline level can serve as a reinforcer, even if it's a less preferred activity. This means a low probability behavior can sometimes reinforce a high probability behavior, in contrast to the predictions of Premack's principle. For example, suppose this person wanted to increase the amount of time they spend studying. What type of contingency should they arrange? Response deprivation theory predicts that a lot of studying, say 20 minutes, in order to earn a little exercise, say 5 minutes, should be effective at increasing studying, reinforcing studying. Note that this reciprocal contingency also punishes exercise a little. There are only so many hours in the day, so something had to go. If this person wanted to increase studying without decreasing the amount of time they spent exercising, they would have to figure out a different contingency.